Nils Gustafsson recalled seeing a figure in black with red eyes coming to get himself and his friends in the middle of one June night in 1960. By the end of the day, Gustafsson would be the only survivor of a brutal attack. This is the case of the Lake Bodom murders. Let's step into the cold. Finland is a country home to roughly 5.5 million people and is well known for having many lakes and islands. There are over 180,000 lakes to visit, and one lake in particular, Lake Bodom, is located near the city of Espoo. Espoo is around 22 kilometers west of the country's capital, Helsinki, and Lake Bodom itself is 3 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide. At around 6 a.m. on the 5th of June 1960, a group of boys decided to spend time birdwatching near Lake Bodom's shore. They noticed a campsite not far from where they carried out their hobby. All was quiet, just as they needed it to be in order to observe birds. But their attention was drawn to the campsite when they saw the tent collapse, and they watched in silence as a man with blonde hair walked away from the tent. It wasn't until hours later that the crime and its victims were discovered. At 11 a.m., a local carpenter named Risto Siren was jogging along the lake's shore. When he came across the campsite, he approached the tent and discovered the bodies of 3 teenagers. The 4th teenager in the tent had somehow survived a horrific attack that has remained unsolved for over 50 years. On the 3rd of June 1960, 4 friends from Vantaa, a town to the northeast of the capital, set off on a motorcycle trip. The next day they arrived at Lake Bodom and made the decision to camp on the lake's shore. From the shoreline they had stunning views of the calm and peaceful lake. Mela Ermeli Bjorklund and Anja Tuliki Meki were both 15 years old. Both of them had 18-year-old boyfriends. Bjorklund was dating Seppo Antero Boisman and Meki was seeing Nils Wilhelm Gustafsson. The 4 friends had their whole lives ahead of them, until an unknown assailant stopped 3 of them from ever experiencing another summer. Siren contacted the police upon his discovery of the crime, and they arrived at the scene about an hour later. It was determined that between the hours of 4 and 6 a.m, Meki, Bjorklund and Boisman were repeatedly stabbed and bludgeoned to death. Gustafsson was the only survivor and had no recollection of the attack itself. He could only remember a dark figure with red eyes coming for himself and his friends. Gustafsson was taken to the hospital with fractures to the jaw and facial bones, bruises to the face and a concussion. After his release from the hospital, Gustafsson decided to undergo hypnosis. He reported during the hypnosis that he had tried to escape the tent, which caused the killer to kick him in the jaw. He was also able to give details of the man he thought was the killer, and, along with a description from one of the boys who was birdwatching that morning, the police put together this image of the possible killer. Before the murders happened, the killer cut the guy ropes of the tent. It is believed that the killer never stepped foot inside. Instead, the victims were attacked with a knife and an unidentified blunt instrument through the tent's sides. Bjorklund was found undressed from the waist down, and her body was found lying on top of the tent. Out of all the victims, she was the one who had the most injuries. After her death, she was stabbed multiple times. Investigators noticed that Boisman and Meki had died in a less brutal manner. Personal items like wallets and apparel were removed from the tent. Some of these clothes and a pair of shoes belonging to Gustafsson were later found hidden roughly 500 meters from the scene of the crime. Other items, like a leather jacket that Boisman owned, were never recovered. Blood trails and footprints told investigators that the killer had been wearing Gustafsson's shoes. The case went cold for decades. Then, in March 2004, Gustafsson was arrested for the murder of his 3 friends. When he was arrested, Gustafsson had made Esbo his home and was partially retired from his work as a driver and a mechanic for a bus company in the city. He allegedly told a police officer that he was responsible for the murders, saying, "What's done is done. I'll get 15 years. The Finnish National Bureau of Investigation released a statement about the murders the following year. The case was declared solved based upon new analysis of the bloodstains that advances in technology had made possible. The new analysis involved testing DNA, a process that was not possible when the murders occurred. According to the official statement regarding Gustafsson's arrest, he was jealous of the friendships that Björklund had with others. Reference was made to the fact that Björklund had suffered more than the other victims. Gustafsson's trial began in August 2005. The prosecution wanted Gustafsson to receive a life sentence on 3 counts of murder. The prosecution argued that advancements in forensics allowed the evidence to be re-examined, and that the results pointed straight to Gustafsson as the killer. The defence put forward the theory that the murders were the work of one or more people outside the group of friends. They also argued that Gustafsson's injuries were similar to those inflicted on his friends, and that the severity of his injuries meant that he would not have been capable of killing 3 people. On the 7th of October 2005, Gustafsson was acquitted of all charges by the court. Charges of false perjury were raised, and Gustafsson received a €44,900 payment from the state of Finland for the mental anguish he had suffered due to his time spent in custody. No one other than Gustafsson has ever been put on trial for the 1960 murders, but that does not mean that other people have not been looked at as persons of interest. Pentti Sawininen was a local maintenance man who was convicted of many property and violent crimes in the 1960s. While being held in a jail in the county of Kuopio, he confessed to being the Lake Bodom murderer. When the murders occurred, Sawininen was 15 years old and he lived near the lake. The authorities did not give his confession much credit. Investigators knew Sawininen was a psychopath and that he liked being cryptic. In 1969, while being held at Toijala, a prisoner transport station, Sawininen committed suicide by hanging himself. Another suspect was Carl Valdemar Gillström, a kiosk keeper from Oita, a district of Esbo. He was known to hate campers and would often act aggressively. While under the influence of alcohol, he told a neighbour that he was responsible for the murders of the Lake Bodom campers, saying, "I killed them." His property had a courtyard, and just a few days after the murders, he filled in a well located in that very courtyard. His relatives said that the murder weapon was buried in the filled-in well. However, the authorities searched Gillström's house and courtyard when they learned of the filled-in well, but no evidence was found. His wife told police that during the murders, she was awake the entire night and that Gillström never left the house. She also said that her husband had threatened to kill her if she ever came forward with the truth. Gilstrom drowned in Lake Bodom in 1969. Paulie Luoma was, at the time of the murders, a runaway from a nearby work department. He was caught not long after the campers were killed and questioned by the police. He had an alibi and was reportedly in Otanaimi, another district of Espoo, at the time of the murders. Hans Assmann is another potential suspect. On the 6th of June 1960, the alleged KGB spy went to the Helsinki Surgical Hospital to receive medical attention. His appearance was messy, his clothes had red stains, and his fingernails were black. He gave no likely explanation for his appearance and acted in an aggressive and nervous way. At the time, he lived within 5 kilometers of Bodom, a town not far from the lake itself. When he learned that details of the murderer's appearance had been reported on the news, he cut off his long blonde hair. The police met with Hans and noted that his clothing matched the description of the killer. However, the police did not take his stained clothes for examination, even though the doctors who had treated Hans felt that the stains were blood. This summer will mark the 57th anniversary of the Lake Bodom murders. With each year that passes, this case grows even colder, and it seems unlikely that the murders of the 3 teenagers will ever be solved. Tourists still visit the site of the murders to this day. While the memories of the murders are still etched in the minds of people living in the present day, it seems that the Lake Bodom murders and the identity of the killer are being confined to the pages of history.